In this video, I'm going to show you guys a whole bunch of new stuff that I just picked up. Pulps, original art, comic books, and we're also going to find out what happens when Randy's wife goes away on vacation and he's left unsupervised. Hello and welcome to Swarm of Comics. I'm Randy, your handsome and humble host. And today, from the Batcave, we'll be talking about a random assortment of things that I've picked up lately. I'm going to start with a piece of original art that I picked up from my friend Comic Carl. Yes, all my friends that have anything to do with comic books, I just put comic in front of their name. So, not that I know any other Carls. I don't know if anybody knows any. Do you guys know a Carl? I don't know. But anyway, if anybody watching out there is Carl, hey, we'll give you a cool nickname too. But Comic Carl asked me if I was interested. He sort of dipped his toes in the water on original art a while back, and it just wasn't for him, and it didn't tickle his fancy, his comic fancy. I, on the other hand, used to be a collector of original art 20, 25 years ago. I started buying it on eBay. I had a really bad sour experience, and I stopped buying it for a very long time. I have picked up a couple of pieces in the last 10 years from a site called albertmoy.com. I'll try and remember to put that up on the screen here. He runs a business where he gets artwork directly from the artists and then he resells it for them. And they negotiate, so try to negotiate if you're ever looking for anything there. But I probably haven't bought any new art in 10 years. So when Carl pitched this idea of selling me this book, or this page, I was very interested. You actually can probably even see it on the little table next to me here, a little crowded down here. This was an opportunity to have a comic page with a character that I probably wouldn't have the budget for one of the pages of their own books. So this is the Suicide Squad. I actually have the comic. Carl gave me the comic book with it. So it's Suicide Squad number 40 from 1990, and that's the cover. Unfortunately, I don't have the cover, but I do have a page in this, and as you can see, it has a Batman on there. So I didn't want to turn down the opportunity to own a page with Batman. I have Omega Men, Silver Surfer, Doctor Doom, Peter Parker, not just as Spider-Man, Hulk, and the Thing. I've got a bunch of cool stuff, but I don't have a Batman. So I will show you guys this page. I will take it out of the sleeve. So, of course, this is a penciled and ink, original art. You can see the write-ups and the columns, which is always kind of neat stuff. And it's signed by both the artists on there. So you can see the signatures down the bottom. You can see this beautiful piece of art. There is a Batmobile that looks like a Lamborghini. So this must be in the Lamborghini phase of the Batmobile. So the little things you can see when you collect original art, can you still see me? Is this Batman here. Maybe you can see it. He's not actually drawn on the page. He was drawn, cut out, and then added to it. So they're doing cutting and pasting of things on here. Matter of fact, you can even see right here that Batman doesn't actually have a head. They must have drawn it in later and had an overlay that they just put on there, and then when they photocopied it. The artists draw this stuff. They typically draw it in blue because blue doesn't photocopy on their machines, and then the inkers ink over it, and then you don't see the pencils. So this had a whole bunch of cool things. Now I'm sure everybody does things digitally, or they pencil it and then it's digitally inked and then digitally colored in the whole 9 yards. But this is back in the day. God, how long ago was 1990? I'm not even sure. But this is a beautiful page. We obviously have Commissioner Gordon down the bottom. We have some old lady, Babushka, right there. And we have Batman front and center in uniform, not Bruce Wayne. Super cool, amazing page. And I will hold up the comic to go along with it. I will get this framed. I will put it up on my walls and show you guys then. So that is the first little fun thing. And then Carl threw in the deal when we were negotiating, because I negotiate with him a lot and that drives him crazy, but yeah, you have to do it. He decided to actually throw in to meet the price that he wanted, he threw in some pulps, and I'm a sucker for pulps. Apparently, Carl doesn't really care about pulps. I had a bunch of pulps graded when they first offered it, and they came up with some great grades and some awesome stuff, sci-fi stuff. I like early 50s, from the 30s to the early 50s. I don't really like anything after that. And this was a really cool assortment. Much like Golden Age comics, pulp covers, that's what people love. They don't read them. They don't care what's in them. They're looking for things. They're looking for bondage covers. They're looking for nuclear war covers. They're looking for skull covers. They're looking for any type of things that's outrageous and racy and on the edge. Those are the covers that are really sought after for pulps. I have a bunch from The Shadow, one of my favorite pulp characters. My favorite pulp character. Unfortunately, there's no shadows in here, but there is some cool stuff that I will show you now. Stuff I've never heard of. I'm sure these things were just a million of them out there at the time. This one is called Basement Gang. It says, a daring novel of reefer smoke, reckless thrills, and the wild love of boys and girls on the city streets. I mean, that's pretty intense there. So now we'll show you the cover. It's pretty beat up, but it's, it's a pulp cover. It's exactly what you'd expect. So apparently this is from 1953, first print, and this is a banned cover. Maybe, I don't know why it's banned. I'd have to look it up. I didn't really care, but I haven't dug into these deep yet. But I am going to have these graded because they were all in really good shape and very interesting. So that's the first one. The second one is the Double Cross. It just looks like a heist criminal thing. You've got a lady with a gun, you've got a safe, you've got a guy with jewels and everything. Not the best painting. I've never really heard of this one. This is from 1946, the Double Cross. Maybe this is somebody who was well known at the time, a Jimmy Trainer mystery. I don't know. I'm a little too young. I'm old, but I'm a little too young for that. But still, a pretty cool one. Now we get into the racy stuff. This is what people definitely like. This is a combination of a couple of different things. This is a little later. This is 1960. And if it wasn't for the cover, I probably would have skipped it. And it's in really good shape. It's worth getting done. So here it is here. This one is called Astounding Science, Fact, and Fiction. Skull cover. Big check right there. And then hypodermic needles and test tubes. Immortality for some. Maybe they're experimenting with drugs and everything like that, but hypodermic needles and skulls on the same cover is a recipe for success. And this says, yep, volume 65, number 1 from 1960. So a little later than it's probably the oldest pulp that I own, but a beautiful painted cover. Here's one here from 1954. This is called Science Fiction Adventures. This is definitely science fiction-y, but again, another skull. So you've got some weird little alien on an astronaut skull here. I don't know if I have much information. Volume 2, number 1, 1954. So that's right in the wheelhouse. Beautiful cover, beautiful shape. I mean, this, honestly, I wish you guys could see this. This looks brand new as the day it was purchased. Don't know if it's worth anything, but I think that one's worth getting done. I actually kind of want to read that one. This is one as the pièce de résistance. This one is ridiculously weird, and this is certainly one that I was happy to get. It looks so poorly done and painted, but I still absolutely love it. This one is called The Case of the Walking Corpse. And yes, that is a clown with a big knife in him. From 1945, so this is classic. This is right in the wheelhouse of what I would want. This is in really good shape. Really, really good shape. No idea there's any demand for this, but a clown with a big knife in him, and it says The Case of the Walking Corpse. I mean, they must have sold 1 million of these things. These are such garbage, and they're amazing. They're absolutely stunningly beautiful. So, you saw the original art. We got the pulps in here. Then we get to the part where my wife was away. I was unsupervised. It was late at night, and I was on my computer, and I was probably doing some thumbnails for one of these videos. And I was like, I wonder what's happening on Heritage Auctions right now. So I just brought it up on a screen just to see. I hadn't been buying anything lately. I've been trying to stay off of the auctions, all of them, and staying off eBay. I've almost purchased nothing on eBay lately. I think I went months and months without buying anything. And I don't know what happened. I was just unsupervised. There was nobody there to tell me what to do. And I suddenly won a whole bunch of books. None of them are super expensive, and they're weird. And I don't know why I bought them. I think I was just lonely and I missed my wife because I love her. And this is the stack you saw in the intro of books that I bought. So I'm going to unwrap this bubble wrap. I definitely bought some weird stuff. And I'll also tell another story about a couple of things that I purchased. So this first book here, it is a graded 5.0 Crime Detective Comics number 6. Yeah, it's a gorilla and a couple of gangsters. And it said, I knew we were robbing a gorilla's apartment, but why didn't you tell me it was this kind? Maybe they meant it was like a goon, like a gorilla, like a big McGilla gorilla enforcer in the mob. But no, this is an apartment that has a real gorilla. And yeah, Crime Detective Comics number 6 from Hillman Periodicals from 1949. I don't know why. I bid on it and then all of a sudden I owned it and I didn't mean to. Sometimes I have to make sure I click the disable bidding button, but sometimes I don't. And I got this gem. I mean, the gorilla looks very upset. Like they wrecked his apartment, like he broke the door and everything like that. Okay. Sorry, I'll stop talking now. Next book. So the next book is where that little story I was going to say is I have a good friend of mine. His name's Rick Habib. He's in an amazing progressive metal band. He's in actually a whole bunch of bands. If you like technical death metal, he's in a band called Reeking Aura. And he's recently been chatting with me as he watches these videos. Hi, Rick. Hey, Comic Rick. Or Metal Rick? I don't know what to call him there. I can't get this tape off of here. He decided, although he does have a comic collection, he used to collect comic books. He's started collecting Mad magazines. His goal is to collect one of every Mad magazine, and I think the original run was 350 issues. I really don't have any Mad magazines. I'm not interested in really any Mad magazines, but I am because I'm a fan of EC Comics. Matter of fact, you can see my shirt here. Swarmer Comics. Clearly, I made this shirt for myself, and clearly, it is inspired by EC Comics. So him and I were chatting about the books that he was picking up, and I was just in this auction, and there were some Mad comic books. So as you might know or might not know, Mad Magazine was actually a comic book at first. It's called Tales to Drive You Mad, and it was made in the 1950s from EC Comics, and then when the Comics Code Authority took over, because these things were too violent or too racy or too gory or everything like that, they put in this, the Comics Code, and EC Comics basically ceased to exist. They stuck around for another year or two with big giant Comics Code, labels right on it, and they were just not interesting. People stopped buying them. But the comic book Mad turned into Mad Magazine. And of course, I'm sure William Gaines, who owned the company, William Gaines Jr., and turned into Mad Magazine and made $1 billion after that. And he was just fine after EC Comics stopped making horror books. So I was kind of inspired by Rick. And this was a couple of things I picked up. So this was Tales Calculated to Drive You Mad. We just call it Mad. And this is issue 21 from 1955. And the cover is very interesting, clearly. It's supposed to look like the advertisements that's actually on the back of the comic books, or one of the ads in the comics where you're sent away from, you can get jokes and pranks and bicycles and everything like that. And this is what this cover is. You can get a compressed air torpedo. So this was the goofy stuff that Mad was putting out back then. And I also actually bid on Mad number 2. It has a baseball player cover, and that got a little too rich for my blood. I was hoping to get it for a steal, but I did not. Now this one I showed you here is kind of interesting. Again, not super amazing cover, but why this is important is that this is the first appearance of Alfred E. Neuman. So anybody who's read a Mad magazine their entire lives knows Alfred E. Neuman, and I'll try to show it to you, but Alfred E. Neuman is on the cover right there. Hopefully you can see that. So that is the first appearance ever in 1955 of Alfred E. Neuman. Pretty cool, amazing book. All right, next one here is another Mad. Tales calculated to drive you mad. And this one is issue 23. And this is actually, I think, the last, I think this is the last one, but I'll show you here. It says, humor in a jugular vein. Okay. And there it is. Think. Mad. Issue 23. And let's see what it says here. It says, Mad changes to magazine format next issue due to Comics Code Authority. And there's an atomic explosion panel, as I said before. Comic books and pulps, they love atomic explosions, whether in the cover or inside. They love hypodermic needles and skulls, and they love, Nazi stuff, like beating up, punching Nazis in the whole 9 yards. And they love all the bondage stuff. So this is the last Mad magazine, Mad, before it turned into Mad magazine. So my buddy Rick is, if he picks up the first issues, he's going to be picking it up right after this. So Rick, if you're out there and you want to buy these for way more than I paid for them, you just message me, buddy. So those are a couple of cool ones. These are my first Mad. I have a lot of science fiction and horror EC books, but I did not have any Mad. I also didn't have any of these Mad books. There was some, not Mad books, EC books. Everybody talks about the horror books. So, EC put out a lot of different types of books. The biggest books that everybody knows about are their horror ones. They were reprinted by Gladstone. They were reprinted 1,000,000 times. They're in trades. People love buying them. I have some amazing ones. I have a copy that was owned by William Gaines Jr., part of the Gaines file collection, and issue 36 of Tales from the Crypt. Because we had the movies, we had the TV shows on HBO. We all know that. So the horror stuff was the top of the line for EC. Then there was the sci-fi stuff. There was some pretty cool stuff in that, especially because Frank Frazetta did some of the covers and artwork in some of those. Then you had things like Mad, and then you had, was it Battlefront? Warfront? Frontline? Yes, they had war books. EC had war books too. And they also had, the very little known for the most part, pirate books. So I don't own any EC pirate books. And this is a 7.0 from 1955. 7.0 in a pirate book isn't like having a 7.0 in a 1955 Tales from the Crypt, but still. And it says on the credits here, it's a Howard Pyle's An Attack on a Galleon homage cover. So basically what EC do, and EC used to get in trouble for it too, in their sci-fi books especially, is that they would steal stories from known authors. They would steal stuff from, Arthur C. Clarke and everybody. I think they even stole from Arthur C. Clarke. I think it was Arthur C. Clarke. Again, no research on this because I'm just going off the cuff and at the top of my head. And he sued them, and what they agreed to do was put his name on the comics, and he would get a percentage of it. So I said, Arthur C. Clarke. It's one of those others. But there was some famous writers that they used to borrow storylines from. So they probably borrowed from a famous book or story or painting or something like that, this cover. So here it is, number 3 of Piracy from 1955. I even like, so the EC logo. That's pretty cool. I didn't know this before. EC logo right here. Hopefully that's not blurry. Hopefully that comes in. You can see the EC logo, pretty creative little and copied and parodied logo. Like I said, I have it on my shirt. So the Piracy one looks like a ship's wheel, which I think is pretty fun. That's pretty neat. Fun and creative. I like stuff like that. I like little details like this. And this is a 7.0, but I'm going to tell you this right now. This is I think this is an older slab. I bet you with a clean and a press, this could come in an 8.0 easily. If you ever saw how good and clean this book was, it's unbelievably nice. It's way better than a 7.0. For a book from 1955, way better. Oh, and I just noticed this on the back. There's a sticker on it. I don't know how to pronounce the name, but it says Eide, Greg Eide, from the personal collection of Greg Eide. I don't know whether they just put a sticker on all of theirs, but it's a little holographic sticker on there. I wonder if the others have that. No. Just this one. Well, Greg, thank you very much for piracy number 3. I think it's a pretty neat book to own. I think I have enough EC books where I'll kind of put them all up behind me some point, maybe. All right, last book here. Last book. This is a book that I've been trying to get for a while, and I finally picked it up because it was a low grade. Because otherwise it was just too expensive. If you've watched any of my videos, especially the older ones, I really love, much like the Pulps, I love the old sci-fi books, all the knockoffs of Buck Rogers from back in the day. And there was a million of them. A million of them. And I have some issues of, old Flash Gordon's, old Buck Rogers, old Famous Funnies books with Buck Rogers, including, one that was done by Frank Frazetta on the cover and so forth. And then this is a kind of, and again, I have a bunch of no-name ones that most of them lasted 1 issue, 2 issues, 3 issues, and the companies went out a belly up or they didn't sell enough or whatever it was. So this was a cool one. Without further ado, in a low grade, this is Space Busters #1 from Ziff Davis. So you have these beautiful painted covers from all these books back in the day, very much like, the nice painted colors of the pulps. And yeah, 2.5. It's still a pricey book in a 2.5. It's got a sticker on it. So let me look and see what the sticker says. It's definitely not my eyes. It's definitely because it's dark in here. This says, I don't know, somebody's collection. People just stick a sticker on there. Henry Morrison. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to read it. I can't read the stupid thing. It's what it is. So that was the last book that I picked up. And I didn't win a bunch of other books that I bid on, thankfully. I was glad. Sometimes I bid on a book and it gets down to the last few seconds. I'm like, oh, God, please, somebody outbid me. Somebody outbid me. And then they did. So that's what we got. So we have a nice collection of some beautiful, cool... Maybe that'll go on the thumbnail. See, that's why I was quiet there for a second. Some cool old Golden Age books, some beautiful pulps, and a cool piece of original art. So I hope you enjoyed sitting with me and going through hearing all my stories. I love it when you guys join me. Make sure you comment. Tell me all the stuff that you love. Tell me all the stuff that you hate. And make sure you subscribe as well. And thanks for coming and hanging out with me in the Batcave. Join me again for another video. Go ahead. Go back to screwing up these endings and sound like a clown. Anyway, thanks for joining me.